Okay, this is the critical lap. This is the critical lap. Confirm.
Leave me alone. I know what to do.
Welcome to the Critical Lap, your one-stop strategy for all things F1. I'm Ruben, one of your hosts, bandwagoneer, the newcomer, eager American, came in with Drive to Survive and stayed for the party.
And I'm Daniel. I'm the old guy here, veteran, if you will. I like internal combustion and speed, and I've been a Formula One fan for quite some time.
Nice. What's up, Daniel? How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. I think I'm finally coming off the holiday hangover.
Nice. Whether
you call it all the ways in which your family made you sick, emotionally or physically, or just the excess of food. I think I'm finally feeling 2025.
Yeah. It's that hangover is real. I definitely know the mini me's are. I think they're ready to be back in school and just enjoying life, rather than trying to adjust to all the family chaos. So
yeah.
How are you surviving off season? Still hanging in there?
Still hanging in there. Weekends aren't quite as interesting. Not as much on the calendar, but
right.
What about you? What's your preferred non-motorsport time thing to do?
I mean, I'm a decent fan of the NFL, and so I'm watching all the lead up to playoffs and getting ready for the playoffs. So, I mean, that's where I'm spending a lot of my spare time. That and I've spent a fair amount of time over the last week helping my kids work on their Pinewood Derby cars, which I don't know if you can see them or not, but I've got the Ferrari SF24 is the latest development. So yeah,
I mean, technically that is an all composite car, right? Because sometimes wood is considered a composite material. I don't know if that's like an actual just a full piece of wood, or if it's a particle board compressed or whatever. But
I mean, there's tungsten in there, which I don't think is being used in the modern F1 car. I don't think, unless they're trying to add weight, which we were. But I'll have an update for you next time on the performance of the car. We take it out for testing and for racing tomorrow. So, yeah.
Well, there's a nautical term to contend with there, which is ballast. And if they are using something heavy like that, I feel like it's for ballast.
Right. Just under the feet of some of the smaller drivers, maybe. Nice. Well, yeah. So some stuff on my mind recently. I've been had the debate over which car to build. I think I might have jinxed my son last year because he opted for the Mercedes, which, as you know, clocked in second in the Constructors' Championship, and we clocked in second overall speed-wise. And so this year, I said, "Hey, you should do the McLaren," and he was like, "I want to do the Ferrari," which, let's be honest, was easier to paint. But if we clock in second this year, I'm going to be like, okay, that's it. Next year we do the number one Constructors Championship.
Right. Although, how do you paint a Red Bull car? I feel like that's lots of colors.
It's so many. Yeah, like I need red. To be honest, I just need the simplest car, preferably Ferrari, to win the Constructors this year because it's just red. But we'll see. If we pull out the win, then we'll do whatever we want. We'll paint it as a Duracell battery topped Williams next year if we want to.
That's cool. Can you use a Duracell battery as ballast?
Yeah.
Or does it have to be the little tungsten ingot or whatever?
No, it can be. I mean, it can be whatever you want as long as it has no active elements. So somewhat similar to F1 cars, it cannot have any active aero or weights.
So composite build, no active aero.
Yeah.
Minimum weight requirements.
Minimum weight requirements.
Is there a maximum weight that you can have?
No. Oh, sorry. There's no minimum weight. There's a maximum weight of 5 ounces, and you want to be right up to that. There's all kinds of. My nerd factor goes off when we start building these because it all where you want it on the car is all super important. So,
is there a drag coefficient on this Pinewood? You're a Pinewood constructor? Okay,
I'm a Pinewood constructor. That's right. I manage 2 drivers, both very competitive. One slightly more than the other. And I think that's reflected by the fact that one did the Mercedes last year and one did the Mandalorian ship from the Star Wars Mandalorian show.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
which is basically a party bus with Nerf darts deck on the side. So we weren't going to win any championships with that one, but it was still
Speaking of
a lot of
drag,
fun.
speaking of drag coefficient, that's not great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Well, that's super interesting.
This year we're going to be competitive on both, I think.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Anyway,
best of luck.
Speaking of McLaren,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. All right, we've been talking about this ad nauseum. I mean, all year it was talked about, but Norris getting lined up for the championship run. I think the last time we talked, one of my yes/no questions, my quick reactions questions for you was, is Red Bull going to miss out on both championships this next year? And I think you said yes. So maybe we'll start off with a hot take. Is Norris going to get the drivers' championship this year?
I hope he does. So my answer, my quick reaction answer is yes, because I want him to. So there's a lot of bias built in there.
Okay.
But I think that, I mean, the momentum is there, right? He wasn't there at the beginning of last season, but eventually the car caught up to the Red Bull. And Red Bull, I feel like if Red Bull had, taken a left instead of a right on some of the upgrades, maybe they would have just maintained somewhat of an edge throughout the season. But they didn't. So what's to say that they'll, somehow not put that foot wrong this year? Meanwhile, McLaren isn't not developing, isn't not trying to win. I mean, if you think about it, a low budget or smaller capacity, whatever team, their best chance is right at the end of regulations, right? Like if they just keep making the current car better and better and better instead of thinking, okay, let's try to outcompete everybody out of the gate on the new regulations. Their best chance to get, I mean, they got the constructor's title this year, good for them, but their best chance to get world championship for the driver is here at the end of the season because they're working off of these many years of actual development and real life proof of concept or testing in on the track. Whereas 2026, I think, is anyone's game. I think Audi could come out strong in 2026 just based on all the different factors that they have going for them. I hope.
So you think when you say end of the season, you mean end of the regulation block
period? Yeah.
Which is usually what, 5 years on like rules and settings, plus or minus?
That's a good question. Probably.
Okay. Because it's been Mercedes dominated for like 7 or 8 years, right? And that was all in the same regulations?
I think there was one change during their domination. So I think they had a good 7-year run.
Okay.
Or 8-year run. If you think about like, I need to research this. We're out of my depth again.
No, that's right.
But basically, like you had the V10s or V8s, whatever the last one was, where Red Bull had their 4 back to back with Vettel. Then you kind of have the marked change there where the regulations were updated, and then Mercedes came into play, which I think, the argument there is that the regulations are starting to favor the actual manufacturer. So like bringing in the money from the automotive companies that can benefit from this type of R&D makes it to where, it gives the Mercedes and it should give the Renault, other types of, big major companies, the Cadillacs. I'm just kidding.
The Cadillacs.
It should give them like more of an incentive to be in that R&D space and then give them some sort of like follow-on benefit from having all this development done so that they can apply the technology in their road cars.
Got it. Okay.
So
you think there's the best benefit for someone like McLaren is right here at the end. They've had a few years to really work out all the kinks and problems, and this is their shot before it changes again.
Yeah, if you think about it, they depend on someone else for their power. They're doing their own aero. I guess they're probably doing some tweaks to their power, but throwing out the rule book and starting from scratch or kind of like updating the rule book, that's like they're getting rugged pretty badly because it's just a lot of question marks. So I'm sure they're hoping for the best, but expecting the worst year one of the new regs. Okay. And they're probably less comfortable directionally than a Mercedes or a Ferrari or a Red Bull
on the kickoff. Okay. That's okay. So it's McLaren's year.
It's McLaren's year.
Specifically, it's Norris's year. Okay, so but Helmut Marko says he's not emotionally ready. I'm trying to think of like all the things I saw this year with people commentating on he talks too much or like Norris is, too chatty. Is Norris going to come out this year differently than last year? Because I felt like his car wasn't there, and then when his car was there, by the end of the season, he'd let Verstappen shut the door on him a few too many times, or
Yeah, he
whatever.
was kind of the king of getting pole and then giving away the lead on lap 1, right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if that's a mentality thing or if that's a car thing, right? Like you're driving differently when you're qualifying, and you get your qualifying lap starts at speed, right? You're
Right.
coming around, you're setting yourself up so that when you cross the line, you're maxed out as best as possible. When you're coming off the line, is it the car? Did Piastri outperform? I think he did on a couple of starts, but what's going on there? Is it driver preparation? I mean, they all have quick reaction time, right?
Right.
So what is it that's giving the second, the P2 sitter the advantage over Norris when Norris is in P1? I don't know. I don't know if that's mentality or if that's, I don't know. Think about this too. The grid is set up to where P1 starts ever so slightly ahead of P2, right? But
Right.
P2 is always on the side that's advantageous going into the turn. So I guess you could argue that's just the inside line every time. So P1 starts ahead, but P2 starts on the inside. So there's almost just like a built-in advantage to whoever's in P2. If they can just go late on the brakes, they have the driving line. If
Yeah.
P1 isn't able to get a full car length ahead of them when they start to get in front of them and take that line,
Right.
So it's almost like
Verstappen's always going to shoot right down the inside from second place and cut him off.
if you think about it, right? If you've got a fast accelerating car, if you've got the grip set up where you can do one formation lap and have some amount of heat in the tires, yeah, and I don't think any cars are designed for that one specific thing, right?
No, but I just mean, that was what. Well, especially if you're defending. So last year, I feel like we had two different situations. The first half of the year was looked like business as usual with Verstappen dominating, and so then he got that huge buildup of points. Well, then after that, then we started seeing all this so-called aggressive driving by Verstappen because he's defending at that point, right? So yeah, chuck it down the inside line and drive your competitor off the class. I mean, I know I'm like that's a hot take. I know like he claims that he's driving cleanly, but
well, he claims that he's driving within the rules, right? And rules are just up for interpretation all the time. Something else we've talked about, right? Like whether it's Helmut's comments about Norris's mental readiness, or whether it's like, hey, I'm within the envelope of what's legal or allowed. Every single thing counts. Everything counts, which is kind of why I said Hamilton deserves every win he's ever gotten. It's whether they got it by, the team being aggressive with the principals, or not just the principals, the officials, or like whatever it might be. Like it takes that village. So like if you win, if the chips fell to you in any kind of, difference of opinion or difference of whatever, it's because everything around you and every little tiny decision and tiny factor played a part. So you got it,
right?
And the same, I would say the same thing goes for Max's championship in 2021, right?
2021, right?
Like the chips fell the way they did for whatever reason. It's almost like a butterfly effect, right? Like,
yeah,
okay. So whatever it is, like, if you're not trying every single one of those little factors, then like at the end of the day, you don't win, you don't get the position, you don't get the title. You can go back and say every one of those little things could have been done differently or more competitively
right.
to get that. So again, reasons to love the sport.
What do they call that? Hindsight 2020, or when you're looking in that rearview mirror.
Yeah.
So all right, well, so then I'll put you on the spot. Is Verstappen? Is he racing within the rules? I mean, obviously there were times where they thought he wasn't, and he was penalized,
right? But I think there were times that I thought he wasn't penalized. I also remember there being times when he was penalized for small things. But I mean, within like what the rules allow,
Yeah.
it does become subjective to what the officials see and decide to investigate or decide to, spend time on. Because moving under braking, right? That to me, that's one of the most subjective pieces. Like, at what point
Right.
is he braking enough
Right.
to where he can't move? At what point is he moving in the direction of the racing line because he took that trajectory when he started braking? So
Right.
if it's not like a straight up Lance Stroll like weaving back and forth under
Right.
braking, yeah, I mean, and as a driver, like you said, Verstappen had the most competitive car, the dominant car for a while, and then whatever race it was in 2024 where Lando could finally keep up with him, finally overtake him with DRS, finally kind of have almost a 1-for-1 car, whatever factors that were there. Then what did we see Verstappen do when he couldn't just rely on the competitiveness or the edge that the car gave him? Then what do we
Right.
see him do? Then we see him
Right.
hanging onto the brakes all the way up the inside, pushing that arc or that apex or not hitting the apex and then like going super wide on the exit. If he's in the right spot because he went late on the brakes, then like, is that legal? Is that ethical?
Yeah. Right.
Is that what other drivers
Right.
would do to each other? That kind of thing. But we didn't really see that from Max until he didn't have that much of an edge out of the car. So again, if I'm Max, yeah, I push all the way to the very bleeding edge of that envelope because I'm competitive. I'm a winner, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there were times when he was penalized last year. There was one time, I think it was at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, where he ran Norris off the road right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, technically he was passing, and then Norris went wide, came back onto the track, and didn't give the place back. Right, so arguably he should have given the place back, but they both went wide, and they never caught that one. They never said anything about it. And I thought, but then he had no intention of stopping. He had no intention of making that turn.
It's kind of funny because like when I'm talking about going late on taking it all the way to the end and then having a wide exit, I'm thinking of turn 1 at Coda. That's exactly what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking of Norris having to kind of be just a passenger on the outside of Max's car. I also think that like you're going to get penalized if you're the one that hangs the wheel up under the other guy's wheel, right? So if you're Norris and you're like,
Right.
well, I actually had this line first, maybe you can split hairs on at what point, because is it before the apex or is it after the apex? Did he get
Right.
ahead of me or did he get almost up alongside of me before the apex? I think it's impossible for a driver to like calculate that in
Sure.
on the fly.
Right.
But let's just say
Yeah,
let's just say I'm Norris and I'm committed to the line, come what may. I don't know if Max was alongside or not, and I just keep turning in. I think that's just like mutually assured destruction, right? And I think Max knows that. And again,
for sure.
does Max deserve that corner? Does he deserve that win when he's like bluffing, knowing that the other driver isn't going to destroy both of them? I also think that happened if you remember, like when Hamilton and Max, I think it was Monza, or it was at Monza or Canada. There was one track with a long chicane or a long lead up to a chicane where they ended up on top of each other, right? Where Max went over the top of the Mercedes. I think that was the same thing. I think it was like, hey, if you defend this to the end, it kills us both. And
right. And I have more points, so I'm okay with that.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I'm curious too. So in the case with a question for a long-term fan, they always talk about giving the place back, right? So in that sense, let's go back to Coda, Circuit of the Americas for the new fans like me who have to always put 2 and 2 together. For the Max Verstappen goes up the inside. Lando Norris already has the lead or feels like he has the lead going into the turn. And then Max effectively drives him off the track. They both go off the track. If you're Lando Norris, you felt like you were ahead at the turn. You felt like you were driven off the track. You can see that your competitor drove off the track as well. So in my mind, either way, I would think I either had the turn already and it's his fault and I get the place, or he drove off the track too. We both went off the track. We're both entering the track. I'm entering ahead, right? Like, so then he was supposed to give the place back. I'm kind of confused about that whole process. Like, how fast do you have to get the place back? Is there any reason why you would before the stewards told you, or do you just say, tell me if I have to, and then wait for the stewards to actually make the call? It seems like they can just come back on and then their team say, like, you should probably give that back. But like, why would you not just hold it and say, I'm going to wait for the stewards to tell me that I have to do that?
Well, I think it's better to give the place back when you're in a position of competition versus getting stuck in the pits for 10 seconds before you can do anything. Like 5 or 10 actual seconds versus like give the place back and then try to keep the gap under a second over the next couple laps and then get it back the right way.
So if you wait for the stewards, then you have to have a penalty. They won't just say like, we looked at it and you need to give the place
Well,
back.
that's the gamble, right? So there's so much to unpack case by case, because how egregious was the pushing off the track? How egregious was the unsafe re-entry? How egregious was okay, I'm going to claim that they pushed me off the track. I'm just going to, because it's this one turn where I know I can kind of get an advantage when I come back on and stay ahead, right? I think that it's just the gamble that you have every single turn in every single race. And I know that every time that happens, the teams are just like furiously like going over all the data. They're just like, oh, looking at the footage, looking at the data, and they're kind of starting to build their case so that they can instruct the driver, like, go ahead and give it back. It's definitely going to be a penalty. Or here's the percentage of probability that it's going to be a penalty. I think you see some teams just kind of be like, hey, it's up to you, driver. Give it back or don't. We recommend this or whatever. I don't think we hear the radio chatter that they probably also talk about it before the race. There's probably a part of the prep where they're just like, hey, you're in P4, so-and-so's in P5. If they come up the inside, this is the kind of driver they are. Let them have it, get it back later, or hold it.
Right.
Because they're this close to their, like Kevin Magnussen, this close to like getting bumped for a race because of their penalty points. They're going to YOLO it or they're not going to YOLO it or whatever. I think the drivers are kind of prepared for different circumstances, right? But it's a gamble. And actually that's kind of one of those things where I still kind of get captivated in the moment where I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? Right. Cause you're going to see them give the position back and then you might hear the radio call afterwards. Right.
Right.
Or you're going to see them hold it and get a penalty point. I also don't know if giving it back completely, gives up your penalty.
Yeah.
Risk.
If it's like egregious and
if there was contact, right? If there was contact,
causing
you might get
collision.
Yeah, exactly. You might get penalized for causing a collision regardless. So like if there was contact and you're in the lead, if you're going to get a penalty for causing contact anyway, stay in the lead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so, all right, let's say that I've passed you off track and I kind of know I need to give it back. And the team radios me and is like, hey, you need to give that position back. In my mind, I would get on the straight where you top out at 200 miles per hour and I would slow down to 198 miles per hour and let the person crawl past me so that I was right on their back. I mean, going into the first turn, like just barely let them pass me. Is there some like, do you have to have some like basic level or minimum level of distance you give them? Is there like any rules guiding that or?
I'm sure there are, and I'm sure the drivers know them really well, because I think you see less of that than you would if it was allowed, right? I think maybe it's just like, hey, you've got this much track or this much time to give it back. You don't get to be super cheeky and selective. I'm sure the drivers are like, oh, I'm this close to the straight or I'm this close to whatever place where I can do it easily.
Right.
And not, because I mean, think about how much time like a little bit of like an oversteer, lose a little bit of traction out wide, or going over the wrong curb and just getting like shunted or whatever. Think about how much that affects a lap time.
Right.
It is way more of an impact when you have to slow down those whatever miles per hour long enough for a car to get around you, right? So I think you want to actually pick a time where both cars are slow, where you can just like slow down extra, or pick a time when it's more difficult for them to get that much further ahead of you. But I also think that there's a limit. That's something I'd have to look up. That's a good question.
Yeah. I'm just curious because I've heard them say you need to give that position back, give that back strategically, or like, I forget how they word it. And, but I've always just wondered, like, I would I would let them pass me right as we went past that DRS qualification line.
Yeah.
And then immediately get that
Give
DRS.
yourself the best. And I've seen that. I'd have to go back and races they are, but I've seen that to where, okay, you got the place back. Now I'm competitive. I'm back to, attack. And it's just like it's like a switcheroo. But also think about this. If you're given a place back because you got around somebody and you had to get around them with like that, was it fair? Was it not fair? It's probably a pretty good little battle to watch or a little battle that's taking place. So you give the place back. It may not be a car that you have that much of an advantage over to just be able to like retake it,
Yeah. So, all right. In recap, we give the position back strategically. We're not entirely clear on exactly what those strategic rules are. I'm also curious to find that out. Maybe we can talk about this next time. That and when they do rolling restarts. Rolling restarts? Is that what they call them? So they're always like kind of hesitating. I'm like, how long can they just like drive slowly before they go? And every now and then they'll kind of like gun it a little bit and then slow down again. I'm like, how many times can you do that? Because I would blow right past them and be like, it's not my fault they hit the brakes. But
well, as I understand it, once the safety car goes back into the pits or gets out of the way, the lead car becomes the safety car. And the rules up until a certain line, the rules apply that you can't go alongside another car. You can't overtake, obviously. But you just have to, you're just in line behind the safety car, which is now whoever's leading the pack, right? They get to set the pace. So I think that they're kind of jockeying for like, all right, if I get everybody super slow all the way to this point and then go, that has the best effect behind me. Or if I wait till the very last minute and keep everybody just kind of like, when is he going to go? And go at the last minute, they're forcing everyone behind you to like gauge the distance to that actual line because it's a line that's painted across the track, right?
Right.
So I think it depends on what track it is and the conditions and that kind of thing. But I've just never seen anything crazy really happen on the restarts, except back in Imola or Monza or whatever that was when like 4, 6, 8 cars, I don't know how many cars crashed out because there was a big, pile up ahead and they were coming around the corner on the restart and no one saw it. No one could anticipate it. So I don't know. I've never seen that be that much of an advantage. I'm sure it's somewhere where you can like mess up and someone will get around you. But because you have the advantage of no one can pass you until you decide to hit the gas and you have the advantage of I'm the first one to hit the gas.
Right.
I don't know. You'd have to get extremely lucky to, to remove the advantage there of the person in the lead.
Yeah.
You might even need the FIA to let the cars that have been lapped unlap themselves on a restart.
Well, you could do that. I mean, that's totally their prerogative. As long as you let any cars that have been.
Yeah.
Any? All? Is there any difference? Well, that's probably a hot take one for another day, unless you want to cheat on your quick reaction time. Let's do some quick reactions. I'm actually going to throw back to the beginning and say quick reaction. Is Norris in the right headspace? Is he aggressive enough to go out strong and get that championship this year?
Yes. And I think if he has it in him at all, it's this year. Like I said, this is the year to be able to rely on the car to be competitive. So we'll know. I think we'll know pretty quickly. But I, again, biased because I want him to. I want to see a different champion. I want to see different people on the podium each time. So I think yes. What do you think? Do you think that the stars are aligned?
I think you're right. I don't know. Norris does seem at times almost too nice for the sport. I don't know. I mean, I'm going from limited interactions. I think you're right in the sense that we'll know from the get-go because without a points deficit, I'm curious to see how aggressive he comes out the gate. Right? If we crash, we both crash. If that's the state versus if we crash, I don't get a really crucial 25 points and Verstappen gets 7 and maintains his lead, I think we'll know right off the bat.
Yeah.
If Norris comes out and contests that first turn, and just holds the line and gets clipped, then I think we'll know, okay, he was just holding back at the end of last season.
Yeah.
But But I don't know. I guess we will find out. I was kind of confused why he got such bad starts last year. I think there was only one time he started on pole and actually held pole the whole time. Or held first place and led around the lap. I think he lost it on like 5 other starts. It was crazy.
Right.
But yeah.
That could very well be that the Red Bull car is just over-engineered. And they just there's something in there that, it's a mode, it's a start mode or something that McLaren just hasn't dedicated the budget to, or hasn't focused on it for the last, however many years, and doesn't just have kind of a go-to thing. And I mean, I could be way off there. It could just be reaction time. But I think if it was reaction time, we would have seen some sort of stat lineup where it was like, and Norris can't seem to get started or can't seem to react to the lights going. I don't know. But
well, we'll see. You say yes. I'm kind of leaning toward maybe. My other concern is that he'll come out hot. He'll contest that first turn. They'll crash, and Piastri will get 25 points.
Yeah.
And then once Piastri does that twice, people start asking whether Norris is their best chance or not. And then the higher rules start coming out. And there's all kinds of problems.
Well, the other thing is that Norris can't just delete somebody else's ability to finish and remain competitive, right? Like he doesn't just have one rival. He's got more than one contender coming up. If you think about the competitiveness of the cars at the end of the season this year, or last year, 2024, he can't just knock one out and then not worry about whoever's going to race.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's got to. That's why I'm curious to see how that works. Yeah. What do you got? You got a quick reaction for me?
I got a quick reaction for you.
Hit me.
What do you think about active aero? Should we keep it or should we kill it? Got new regs coming up, and this is looking way further ahead. But active aero,
moving pieces of the outside of the car.
DRS,
and right now that's only DRS.
Yeah.
I think we should keep DRS, but yes, I think we should keep DRS. But I think DRS and any other active aero should be exactly like Mario Kart, where you get certain number of them and you use them whenever you want them. Because if you've got this is so stupid, but if you've got the mushroom in Mario Kart, you wait till you get that little ramp and you can like jump part of the track. You don't just burn it in a turn.
Right.
And I think for the DRS right now, my only issue with it is it's really fun. More, please. Like, you've given DRS to the person that's right behind their competitor. And it's to the point where people are braking at certain points to try to let the other person go first so they qualify for for DRS. That to me is like, well, what about the guy who's 7 seconds behind? Why can't he have DRS? Like, there's nobody in front of him, so he's just going to crawl along while this like train of DRS people catches up to him. And then after he gets past, then he'll be able to actually. So to me, DRS should just be, you either get it or you don't at that section. I would actually be okay with saying everyone gets DRS except the lead car or something like that, where, if you've got clean air, you've got clean air. Everyone else, give them a chance to like bunch back up again.
Well, I think you hit something really interesting, which is the DRS train, right? Because the DRS has this unintended effect of like one car with clean air can hold up 5 cars, and they're all there. They're all competitive enough to get within a second of each other and the person in front. And no DRS train has ever lasted forever. But I hate to see at the end of the race when, P1 is 25 seconds ahead or whatever, you're starting to look at the other battles that are playing out. And then a DRS, like with 10 laps to go, there's a DRS train. You're like, well, there's not another pit stop to break it up. There's nothing else to happen. It's just going to end like this. So I think if you had like a DRS tank to burn through and you could use it at your discretion, I agree. It would become way more strategic of when to deploy it, or when to, you might use a little bit of it right at the end of the straight or just at the beginning of the straight just to get the advantage and, while you're in the slipstream to get around. I don't know if that's even a thing, but if you only had a certain amount to use, then I think a DRS train would never appear, right?
I agree. And I think we could use, I think let's pick that up on the next conversation, because I mean, my quick reaction is yes, we should keep DRS. If anything, we should expand how much you can use it and just put like a the way they deploy their battery right now to catch up, right? I mean, how exciting would it be at the end of a race if you're like, well, Norris used all his DRS to get this giant lead, but then that safety car drew him back in, and now fresh tires, but no DRS, and you've got, Leclerc, right behind him. All right.
Yep.
Another quick reaction for you. Will Brad Pitt's F1 movie be enjoyable for the F1 fans?
So I need to reference the movie from the last episode that we talked about. I was just talking off the top of my head, but it in fact does appear to be a horrible movie. I looked it up after the fact. It's got.
Are you talking about the Lamborghini?
The Lamborghini movie, yeah, 6% Rotten Tomatoes. So just because there's some cool cars in a movie and a name or two doesn't make the movie worth watching. But what I will say about, I think the movie's just called Formula One or F1. Honestly, whatever it is.
I mean, if you're the first one there, grab the title. You can't. Okay, Daniel, I've got another quick reaction for you. Will Brad Pitt's F1 movie be enjoyable for F1 fans? Yes or no?
Quick reaction, yes. And here's why. They paid Hamilton to consult on this movie. And apparently he was just absolutely meticulous about every little detail. And I mean, I think they had Brad Pitt like in costume like throughout like multiple seasons, just like multiple different races. But at Silverstone, they did do some like staged racing with actual. I think like Gasly was one of them. Maybe not Norris. Russell was one of them. But they had Brad Pitt in a car, and I don't think they were at speed. Maybe they were. Maybe they were only at speed with the maybe a stunt driver or something like that. Maybe Brad Pitt can drive a Formula One car at speed. I don't know. But apparently Hamilton was doing things like saying like, hey, you need to take this, you need to do another take on this one because you wouldn't be taking that corner in third gear. You'd be in second getting ready to, do something else.
Oh, wow.
So he like down to that like level of specificity with like what you should be hearing and what you should be seeing and how it's combined. So I'm pretty sure that like as the overtakes were filmed, as different things that were playing out, I'm sure the input was like, as close to made it as close to realistic as possible. Whereas, like my pet peeve in car movies is when the car goes in reverse, and you hear gear changes, like somehow like somebody's like shifting into R1, R2, R3. I hope that there aren't any just like faux pas like that in this, where you're like, obviously that wouldn't be happening in this scenario, right? But I think they spent the money and did the extra stuff with Hamilton's input so that it was as close to real as possible. So I think it'll be enjoyable to watch. Whether the story's good, whether you can believe that a guy as old as Brad Pitt would be still racing. I mean, all that, who knows?
I just looked it up last night. Totally unrelated. Brad Pitt is 61. So for my money, I was like, where is Tom Cruise? Because you talk about somebody that you would assume could drive at speed in a Formula One car.
Yeah.
Something tells me that he'd be like, I mean, I've done a little bit of racing, but not much. And then he would outpace Gasly or something around the first lap.
Yeah. Tom Cruise. I mean, first of all, Days of Thunder. Hats off to that. Just gratuitous 90s awesomeness. 80s, 90s, whatever it was. But yeah, I could see Tom Cruise being like, so in preparation for this film, I bought a racing team and I drove 3 seasons, won the championship, and all these things, and like what I
had a pretty bad crash.
Yeah. I got a Robert Kubica hand now, no big deal.
Right.
Yeah, so like I could see Tom Cruise really killing it there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whether it would be as good or not, he'd have to run at some point, and I've never seen a Formula One driver run. Maybe he could run off the course if it was exploding. Okay, enough on mine. You got another one quick reaction, or can I do a follow
up? Quick reaction. Do you like the hubcaps?
What hubcaps?
The hubcaps on the Formula One cars. Maybe this is too niche.
What's to like about them? No, I don't like the hubcaps.
I hate them. I'm just like
the hubcaps.
Like the reason I asked the question, right, is because they're just so. It just seems like somebody forgot to take them off. Right? They don't. They don't look like a purposely.
That's what
designed.
That's why I said
piece.
what hubcaps. I was like, those like little plane things that they say on there. No, I don't. I don't like that.
Yeah. So hubcaps are a feature of like the new aero regulations, right? And I think that they cut down on wake turbulence.
Right.
And they probably do some things for fuel consumption and that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know if they do anything for raw speed. I just think they look so lame on the cars.
Yeah.
I used to enjoy like not only were the Formula One tires like fat and beefy and the rims were kind of small.
Mm-hmm.
They made the rims bigger, which I think is actually good for speed. I think a bigger rim and a smaller tire reduces unsprung weight
A
to
little
some
more
degree.
rigidity. Yeah.
But then putting like to cover up like what beauty a rim can have or what aesthetics a rim can have with hubcaps, I'm disappointed in that decision. So
yeah. A lot of these decisions feel like things that if they had just thrown that out to the highest bidder, somebody would have shown up. Like Red Bull strikes me as someone who'd show up and be like, look what we made.
right.
And they'd light up or something, and then they could all protest it to the stewards, try to get it made illegal.
A flexible hubcap. It goes from concave to convex at speed.
Yeah, all kinds of cool stuff. It pops out the side, spikes your competitor's wheels. All right. Well, that's probably. Well, actually, I will do one last quick reaction.
Okay.
And this is just a follow up to the last one. Will non F1 fans like the Brad Pitt F1 movie? With all that detail.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a Brad Pitt fan, I like seeing Brad Pitt on the screen. Whether
it'll be fun.
Recently, whether it's the one where he's on a train, which is basically just like the same story, just retold it through a different lens or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Brad Pitt. You never know. He's getting kind of sideways with his divorce proceedings with Angelina Jolie. I don't know if you're following any of that.
Not at all.
But apparently his kids have kind of chosen sides and he's on the outs because he's pushing a little too aggressively with the with what's happening in the divorce, which has been, I don't know, a decade in the making, 8 or 10 years, something like that.
Okay. No, I'm woefully undereducated when it comes to my celebrities. Well, that's it for today. I think we're probably out of time, but thank you for joining us on the Critical Lap. We will be talking to you soon. Please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment or a review. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, let us know when we sound stupid. Let us know what else you'd like to hear us sound stupid about. We just any kind of feedback, we need it. We want it. We love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Like Yuki Tsunoda, we love getting commentary on our radio.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon. It's the Critical Lap.
See you later.